Tatum has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome, everybody, to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I am Brian Ciano. Thank you so much for joining us as we take our weekly look at everything going on in the world of combat sports. We're going to talk BKFC. We're going to talk PFL. We got it all covered here on SportsGrid. We got a bunch of guests coming up for you later on, joining us as well. First, we'll talk to BKFC lightweight Ramiro Figueroa. Just had a great win out there in Denver on BKFC 67 in his fight. We'll also talk to flyweight Andrew the Legend Strode, who also was victorious over Chancey Wilson, knocked him around for 3 rounds. We'll talk about that fight coming up in just a moment when we recap everything that happened out there. And then we're going to close out the show talking to a man who I watched for a long time fighting in the UFC and is now doing his thing with the PFL, and that is the outlaw Dan Hardy. He's out there breaking things down, giving you that perspective as someone who's been inside the cage. We'll talk to him about the fights we just saw out there in Saudi Arabia, that PFL Battle of the Giants pay-per-view, get his opinion on what went down there, and then talk to him about what's going to be happening when he goes back out there next month, where there'll be PFL titles on the line out on ESPN. We'll bring all that up on the show today, and we'll even touch on some stuff that's going to be going down for the BKFC later this week and beyond in a couple segments. But first off, let's just break things down and tell you what we saw out there in Denver this past weekend, last Friday at BKFC 67. The title was on the line. Let's get into it. The Cruiserweight title, of course, was up for grabs between Chris Camozzi and Sawyer DP, that title that was held by the Juggernaut, who is out on that suspension. Now it's up for grabs. Who's going to win it? Number 2, number 3 in that division. We're fighting for it. Camozzi, who had just fought the Juggernaut for that chance and fell a little flat out in Denver, tried to grab that title the second time with the second chance that he had. DP was coming off his win off of Vandermeer with a first-round KO. This one didn't go long. We talked about how both these guys possess power. Both these guys were dangerous, and if they caught the other guy just right, it could be the end of the fight, and we see it right there. Chris Camozzi gets the win. First round, 66 seconds in. He gets the knockout, gets the title. DP was trying to come forward early in that fight, but Camozzi was doing well to get out of the way, using some combinations, using that 2-3, 30 seconds in. Big right hook after about a minute that you see there sends DP spinning. So it wasn't a ton of punches that did the trick. It was a couple here, a couple there to open things up, and then boom, Camozzi lands that right that sends his opponent spinning, facing the other way, falling flat on his face. Didn't even get to the 10 count when the referee got to DP. Saw this was not continuing. The fight was over, and Chris Camozzi gets that title at home in front of the Denver faithful there, as we see.
Man, all my teammates, everybody, Denver, you guys have always been amazing to me my entire career. This means the world to me. After party at Tom's Watch Bar.
Oh, man. Too much to even say. I'm a world champ. Man, I've worked 20 years for this.
Great job by Camozzi, of course, as I said, 20 years Longtime combat vet, fought in so many different disciplines, finally gets that title that he's been looking for so many years, and now is the reigning cruiserweight champion in the BKFC, and we'll see what is up next for him. All his fights have been in Denver. Now he's got that belt. He might have to go travel and do some shows elsewhere to show these people that he is the best. I mean, there's big ones coming up in Philly and LA. There's plenty of opportunity for him maybe to close that out before the end of the year. It's a little tight. We'll see. Or maybe start off next year. Maybe a Knucklemania fight to defend that title for the first time. We will see. But after that, before that actually, was a welterweight fight between Brandon Gertz, the hometown guy, versus Cameron Jumpman Van Camp. We talked about this one, about how Van Camp was going to have a big advantage in the size, but Gertz was ferocious. Both these guys, long-time MMA veterans who were going to be facing each other, knew each other well, and they had a great fight. This one goes the distance to the judges, ends up in a split decision. I hate hearing that, hate saying a split decision when you see a fight. Obviously, you have different people, different perspectives, you're going to see it a different way, but both guys were feeling each other out early. Gertz starting to try and attack and overwhelm Van Camp, but that wasn't what was happening. Van Camp was doing a great job kind of picking him apart, getting out of the way, as you see there in the highlights. That continued. Van Camp throughout the fight was throwing just a stiff jab to keep Gertz at bay if he could, was switching stances to try to throw his opponent off. There were times that Gertz got the better of the shots late in the fight, maybe round 4. I thought that he did a little bit better and got his hands on Van Camp, got in there, closed that distance, didn't let him land those big, out counter shots. Gertz even landed a really big shot in that 4th round that I thought could have put Van Camp down, but he stands up, stands tall, keeps going on. And I thought maybe going to the 5th round might have been split. 5th round, I thought Gertz slowed down a little bit. I thought there was a big difference in the gas tanks here. Obviously, you're at elevation. Shouldn't have affected Gertz as much as at Van Camp, who's coming from Nevada there. But it looked like Gertz started to slow. And that's when I thought Van Camp picked him apart a little more. And I thought Van Camp did the better job. I thought he won the fight 48-47, which 2 judges agreed with me on. But then one gave it to Gertz. Not 48-47 like you expect if you get a split decision like that, but 49-46. So giving him 4 rounds to 1, that one I can't get with. That's always, it's one thing when you have a split decision, 48-47 either way, but when one judge sees it so differently, so slanted one way for the other, I don't know how you see that, but still that is the scores that they came out with. Those were the official scores, and they end up in the hands of Cameron Van Camp, who gets another victory here in the BKFC to now be 2-1, get himself over that 500 mark, while Gertz falls to 1-2 going the other way. You also had City Sundance Smith, who we talked to a couple weeks ago, trying to get back on the winning ways, trying to get her name back in the mix as being, maybe one of the women to watch out for, against a newbie in Kat Poprocki. And Poprocki showed that she is a badass. She was not afraid of the situation there. Round 1, Smith was trying to keep Poprocki at bay with the long jab, trying to keep her outside. But as you see there, it all fell apart later in the fight. Round 4, Smith coming out aggressively, as she did throughout the beginning of every round. But in all those situations, it seemed like Poprocki kind of responded and came back. Right when Smith was coming out trying to be aggressive, Poprocki would not be afraid, would not be phased, would land some big shots, back her opponent up, and start to come forward herself throughout the rest of the round and land shots here, there, some combos whenever she was able to get in the reach of Sydney Smith, and she did so even bigger in the 4th round. You saw those body shots. Those are the things that ended there. At one point, Poprocki came forward, landed a big combo to the body. When Smith dropped those hands, started hitting her again in the head. When Smith put the hands back up to cover the head, back to the body, and that is what does her in. She gets those body shots, goes down to a knee, tries to get right back up, but after the ref gets ready to get the action going again, kind of doubles over again in pain. Those body shots were too much for her to continue, and the fight is called there as Rocky gets the win by TKO late in that 4th round. We're almost there to the bell. 157 was where the ending of that fight comes into fruition there, and that is where it stopped. 157 into the 4th round, just 3 seconds before getting a little break and trying to recover. That's the end for Sydney Smith there. She cannot continue. So Poprocki gets her first win, while Smith now falls to 1-3 in the BKFC and might have to start questioning if this is the right situation for her. I know she loves it. We've talked to her, always positive. I'm sure she'll see the bright side of this as well. But now 3 losses in a row after starting her career with a nice win for the BKFC. Before that, we saw Dylan Schultz versus Derek Perez right there between 2 guys in the bantamweight division trying to make a name for themselves. Schulte gets a 2nd round TKO victory there, dropping Perez twice in that fight. Both of those drops came in the 1st round. Early on, Schulte just throwing big shots. Both these guys going back and forth, throwing major shots, as you can see there. Neither of them was giving up ground, standing in the middle of the ring, trying to outduel the other. The difference seemed to be that, while Schulte was throwing some big shots, he wasn't Perez was throwing the big shots. Schulte was the one who was a little more controlled, a little more landing it, and those hands of Perez just weren't getting enough up to block those shots and deflect them and keep them from landing. He gets dropped there, and 15 seconds in goes down to, and he pops right back up. Then later on, as Perez starts slowing down later in that round, he gets dropped again with just a little bit left in that round, 20 seconds left, so that's a 10-7 round for Schulte. Perez comes back forward again. He wasn't giving up in that second round, but it was just too much. Massive shots landing on him. Eventually, he gets the refs jumping in with just a few seconds left. Again, almost to the end of the round, but it was just too much damage being taken in the second round by Perez. Schulte gets the win. Also, Andrew Strode, who we're going to be talking to coming up on this show, getting a nice win over Ciano Wilson. We're going to be talking to him next. 6 knockdowns in 3 rounds before the fight is eventually stopped, just dominating the former title contender, even overcoming getting body slammed. Also, Ramiro Figueroa, a lightweight, with a nice win over Carson. Very interesting ending to that. And a hungry Hassan, who we've had on this fight on the show many times, getting his first victory on the big show for the BKFC. When we come back, we'll get into things with Andrew Strode here on the Combat Sports Report.
Has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from 3. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from 3 for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid as we continue to look about this great card we just had out in Denver for the BKFC. They always put on some great fights out there. You always get some awesome performances, and one of those was Andrew Strode, the flyweight, who had a great fight in his win over Ciano Wilson, number 4 ranked in that division. Stamping his name now is Strode, showing that he is one of the best to be reckoned with in this division. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you coming on. How are you feeling a couple days out after this fight? I mean, you got to be happy with the performance that you put on against a guy who's, been up there, who's had a shot at some of the best, and still ranked among the best in that division.
Hello, how's it going, Brian? It's good, man. It's been awesome. I want to be blessed. First of all, I want to thank God. I want to thank everybody, BKFC. This been a blessing to me getting this win, against Mr. Wilson, who was ranked 4th in my division. I came in there and did what I had to do. You know what I mean? It was the Strode show.
It certainly was. We're going to break down the fight in just a minute, but let's get to know you a little bit more before that. For the people who don't know, it's a long time training for you in glove boxing. I saw almost 20 years that you've been, training in boxing with the gloves. What made you want to make the transition? What made you want to take them off and take a shot with bare knuckle? And how have you felt in your couple of fights with the BKFC that you've done, and how has it felt making that transition for you, who was so used to having those gloves on for so long?
Everybody knows I trained with the best in boxing, fought the best, mostly world champions that are now, and I felt like boxing wasn't for me, you know what I mean? I felt like I needed more grits, you know what I mean, more than a sport, and I felt like BKFC is meant for me. I got a chance to fight at BKFC 50, and I didn't know what to expect, and I was like, okay, and I tried it, and I was like, damn, this is what I want to do forever, you know what I mean, the rest of my career of fighting.
And, we've seen you look great in that 2 wins now in the BKFC, both finishes. You talked with the BKFC and the app that you have. You can look at the app. You can look at the website. There's a great article about you after the win. Talk about how comfortable you feel in the BKFC, how you feel like this is your home, like you just mentioned. Why do you feel like it's so comfortable? Why do you feel like it's so perfect for you, at this point in your career?
I feel like it's more grit. It's for like the real fighters, the fighters that been through, like as myself, somebody that been through it inside and out the ring. I feel like it's for people who like really want it, and this is my home. I felt like the first fight, I was like, this is where I want to be. This is what I really need in my life. The transition over was amazing. I love boxing, but I feel like BKFC, the bare knuckle, man, is like something. I love the rage. It's something new, and I love it.
And you certainly have shown how much you can excel in it. A great performance, as we said, against Chansey. Obviously he was in the top 5. He had a little. His record wasn't as great as it was before. He's had a little struggles here, but now you send him further down that mountain a little bit more. Maybe even knock him out of the rankings. We'll see where those end up when those come out again. But did you know that you would have such I don't want to say easy time with him, but that you can get to him, and like you did. Obviously you're gonna have the length and the height like you will against most people in this division. But pretty much right off the get-go, you're already putting him down the mat within 20 seconds. Did you know that was something you were gonna have a big advantage with, the power and being able to knock him down?
I did expect it, but I didn't know he would come down and fall like that, like he did. He's a great fighter. Much respect to Chansey. He came to bring it, and I thought it was going to be more, but I feel like I'm the champ. I should be the champ at 125. Much respect to the champ, Dotson also, but I feel like the belt's mine, and it's going to be in mine 2025 or 2026 and 2027.
And you controlled that fight. You had 6 knockdowns throughout the fight. I even noticed after that third knockdown, you're doing a little dance afterwards. You're obviously feeling yourself there. You knew that you were in control of this fight. But then at one point, he goes into, I guess, back into his days of MMA, or I don't know what he was thinking there. Maybe he watched a little wrestling, a little Friday Night Raw before the fight or something, because what was going on there? Picks you up and slams you down. I don't know if it was out of frustration for him or just, like we said, something that was, in the back of his head from his days doing other things than bare knuckle. But what did you think when that happened? How did you react to that? Obviously, it looked like it hurt your back a little bit. When you got up, it looked like it was painful. You continue, you come back after him, you get more knockdowns, you get the win. But what was going through your head as he picked you up and body slammed you out of nowhere?
I didn't expect that. It was funny because I was like, dang, I didn't know this was WWE, but he F5'd me, if everybody in the audience know what that is. He F5'd me, Brock Lesnar, and I was like, got up, and it was like a sharp pain in my back, and I was like, whoa. So, but it did hurt a little bit, but I was very surprised he did that, and it was just funny at the same time. It got me hyped to ready to knock him out and do what I had to do, because it was crazy. I didn't expect it from Wilson though.
You say it was funny, but obviously I'm sure with some bad blood at the time, because after you knocked him down again right after that, you talked a little, you got in his face a little bit while he was on the mat. So you wanted to make the point there about, you did it the right way, putting him to the ground. But, then you get through the third round and all of a sudden, he's being asked after that 6th knockdown if he can continue. Then the ref waves it off. Did you, being there closer than we were, we didn't hear anything on the broadcast per se, but did you hear what was going on? Did he say he couldn't continue? Was it the corner stepping in? Was it just the ref saying this has been, enough? This guy's been taking enough of a beating. What did you see in the ring when they stopped that fight?
I really thought it was just like he couldn't continue, you know what I mean? I was hitting him everywhere in the head. It didn't matter because he was like talking all that smack before. Much respect to him though, but he was talking all that smack, and I was like, I'm thankful they stopped it, because I was gonna go in for the knockout definitely after that.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes they need to step in and protect the fighter from themselves. Now we got 30 seconds here. Now, obviously, you want to be a champion, as you said. Anybody? You should be in that top 5, I assume, after you beat a guy who was number 4. Anybody in that top 5 you're looking at? Anybody that's on the hit list on your way trying to climb to the belt?
John Dodson, that's who I want. I want John Dodson. I want the belt. I feel like I'm the greatest BKFC fighter ever.
All right, going straight for the top there is our man, Andrew Strode. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. Great performance in Denver. Looking forward to seeing you again soon for the BKFC.
Thank you. It's the Strode Show. Let's go.
Has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from 3. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from 3 for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. Great to get to know Andrew Strode. Great performance by him against Chancey Wilson. Awesome fight. Just a dominating performance against the guy who was ranked in that top 5. That should be a great leap for Strode into hopefully getting his name in there in title contention, as he, of course, wants, as every fighter, of course, wants. But a great job by him in that fight in Denver. Later on, we'll catch up with Ramiro Figueroa in the next segment and find out about his fight, which very weird ending, which we'll talk to him about. If you haven't seen it, make sure you tune in when we talk to him about how that fight actually got him the W in a very odd way. But, one thing we can't completely forget about is there was fights out in Myrtle Beach as well this past weekend. Now, we didn't get to watch those. It was a dark card, and I don't think we've seen too much coming out of that just yet. But we can say that we have seen that Slick Rick Caruso, who was going in there against Brandon Bushaw, gets the win with a second-round KO for him. As you can see some highlights that we get off of social media. Great performance. Both these guys just slugging, throwing, and then boom, the big shot that lands and ends the fight there in the name of Slick Rick Bushaw. Going down hard, fight called. Hopefully he is doing well and recovering after that loss. I know how much both these guys wanted this fight. Unfortunate that only one of them could win it, but great job for Slick Rick there, getting the win for his second win in the BKFC. But don't forget, we also have fights going on this weekend that you can watch on the BKFC app. BKFC 68 over in the UK. And there's going to be some titles on the line over there for different belts with the BKFC. You have the European heavyweight title with Elgie Faulkner, the Englishman, 2-0 in the BKFC. Both of those coming by first-round KOs. He's going to try to have some quick win once again, coming in there with that fist against David Oskar, the Polish fighter, 4-1 in bare knuckle fighting. So these are two guys who are valiant, two guys who have shown the power they have. Oskar coming in there, usually having some fights that were a little lower in weight. So we'll see how he comes in there as a heavyweight, how he's looking in this one against a guy who's used to fighting up there with the big boys in Faulkner. You also have the UK light heavyweight title on the line with Connor de Cook from Ireland going against Matty the Hammer Hodgson from England. These should be a great battle as well, with Cook 3-1 in the BKFC. Hodgson 2-2 so far in his bouts without gloves. These guys are, of course, going to have a little bit of beef with the areas that they are from. You're also going to have a lightweight battle between Keane and Bonner there. Keane, the undefeated fighter, 3-0 against Bonner, 2-1. You also have a cruiserweight matchup with Thompson and Chalinsky. Chalinsky making his first fight, Thompson 2-0. So plenty of great fights for the BKFC over there in the UK. Once again, this one's going to be an afternoon fight with it being over there in the UK. So make sure you are checking it out. 3 o'clock Eastern time. Should be some great battles on the line for those belts. Looking forward to seeing that. One thing I am looking forward to, not necessarily seeing, but seeing what comes out of it, of course, also is the UFC doing more tryouts. This time coming in to the East Coast, we'll see them up in the Philly area. Now, of course, we know that there are going to be fights in Philly in a couple months. Those are going to be one of those cards that are going to be shown on DAZN. And this time, we're going to have tryouts in Philly with Eddie Alvarez, November 2nd, Sunday, November 2nd. Of course, the longtime MMA vet, been all over the world with MMA, fighting in so many different promotions. And now, of course, his time with the BKFC, one of the most exciting fighters we have seen in the BKFC. Some great battles he has put on. Hopefully, we'll see him back there again soon. But right now, doing the good work for the BKFC of looking for the next generation of BKFC fighters. He'll be there. Of course, Lights Out Lido will be there, as he always is. And they'll be trying out some of the baddest in Philly and seeing who might be worthy of making the BKFC. Maybe making some Prospect Series cards. Maybe even, if you're good enough, making a jump onto that Philly card and getting your name out there in front of the Philly faithful. And we know that there are a lot of tough guys coming out of Philly. Some actually tough. Plenty think that they are tough. But we'll see who actually stacks up. Who are the baddest down there in that Philly area. Go hang out with Eddie Alvarez, with Chris Lights Out Lytle, and find out if you can be a BKFC fighter. Many are hopeful. We'll see who actually gets through there. That should be a very interesting tryout. Maybe even see some footage of that later on. Maybe I will go watch that. They often put those up there for the BKFC on the app where you can go check out these guys trying out, see who you might want to see in the future fighting for the BKFC. We've had some great names coming out of that. A guy that we just mentioned before, Hungry Hassan, was a guy who kind of went through the trials, went through the Prospect Series up there in Canada, had those 2 Edmonton fights. Now he got to fight on the Denver card, putting on another great performance, getting the unanimous decision win instead of, we usually see him dropping guys. A little more cautious maybe in his first fight on the big card, getting a unanimous decision win, but still a tough fighter at lightweight. We've seen guys like him come to the tryouts. We've seen guys like, the Juggernaut. We've seen plenty of names for the BKFC coming through the tryouts and making their way up into being some of the best in the BKFC. We'll see who's next over in Philly. But when we come back, we're going to talk about another one of the great performances we saw out in Denver when we talked to Ramiro Figueroa here on the Combat Sports Report.
Tatum has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump, his release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not gonna be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. I'm Brian Ciano. We continue to talk about this BKFC card out in Denver. And one of the guys who got a great win, maybe one of the strangest wins you're going to see in combat sports, is Ramiro Figueroa. We're going to talk to him and bring him in right now, bring him back on the show. Ramiro, thanks so much for joining us again. You get the win. We'll talk about it in a minute. The way it ended was probably very strange for a lot of people, but let's talk about the one round that you did fight first before we get to how it ended there. Coming into this fight, you guys, were doing battle. That first round, he was throwing out that jab a lot early going, trying to keep you at bay, trying to keep you, at distance. But you got in there, got a couple shots here and there throughout that round, and really towards the end, started to seem like you found your distance, found your timing, and opened up on him a little bit. How did you feel as that first round was going on through that fight?
Most definitely. I felt great going in that fight. I did want to fill out the process a little more. I knew I could have got him out in the first round if I really wanted to, but I kind of wanted to push it. I kind of wanted to give the fans a better show, especially since it was in my hometown. I kind of wanted to push it to the second and third round. But unfortunately, one of the times in the clinch, I believe I hit him in the stomach, and he just made the weirdest noise ever. And I want to say that I had to play a big part of him throwing up in that corner.
Yeah, that's for the people who haven't seen it yet. You go back and watch it. Obviously, you said you got some great punches, especially at the end of that first round. You had a big flurry. And then all of a sudden, we're watching you guys in the corner getting ready for a second round. And then they get to they're watching you first, and then they go over to his corner, and you kind of see the bucket up. And, many people might be, familiar with, obviously, there's a lot of times where there'll be water in the bucket. They might put water on you, cool you down, something like that, wipe off the blood. But the bucket was pretty close to his face. And all of a sudden, we hear him puking. Were you in the other corner? Did you know what was going on? Or are you just kind of locked in hearing your trainers and all of a sudden the fight gets called and you have no idea what's going on until they tell you what happened?
So I rewatched the fight and I saw, how you said they showed me. I was just telling my coach, I said, he hit me with his best shot. I got him. He's nothing on me. And I said, I'm going to go in for the kill. And I was excited. I got up a little bit earlier than when the bout was intended for me to get up to. And I just looked up and I saw them wave it off, and I was upset. Normally you like to be excited to end fights early, but I wanted to do more of this fight, and unfortunately it happened that way. But there's nothing we could do about it.
No, that's just the way things go sometimes in the fight game. It's not always how you want to win, but you got the win, and that is what matters the most. Now. Was that the weirdest way that you've ever gotten a win? Obviously, you've been fighting for a while. You've fought different promotions, different people, I'm sure different disciplines. Is that the weirdest way you've ever gotten a win, where you have a great round and all of a sudden the guy just starts puking in the other corner?
Yeah, I would have to say that is one of the weirdest ways I've won. I mean, I've never came anywhere near that. I've stopped people before. I've knocked people out. but I've never had somebody quit by puking in the corner. And yeah, without a doubt, it was one of the weirdest ways.
And you said you feel like it was your shots that really, led to that, the shots to the body right before the end of the round, because obviously there's tons of things that go into fighting where, guys are cutting weight, and sometimes that can have adverse effects on the body, or, sometimes you cut that weight, dehydrate yourself, and then, you try to eat afterwards and rehydrate, and that can come back on you too. You never know on the road, food poisoning, there's a million different ways, but you feel like, a lot of that was brought about. You think he was fine, and then that it was the body shots that really did him in and caused him to have that reaction.
Yeah, that is correct. Like I said, I was trying to milk the fight. I wanted it to go a little bit longer, but at one of the points in the clinch, I did hit him. It wasn't a hard shot, but I think it was just in the right spot. He made a really weird noise, and you could tell he just went into survival mode. He started throwing those weird jabs that, weren't even flush. They weren't even straight on his end, and, I think that was his way of showing fear that he was hurt, and I want to say that I had to play a big part of that.
Well, you certainly did a good job there. You proved, how tough you are right away. Like you said, not the way you want to do it, because you want to show the best of you. You want to show all your skills, especially if you go a little longer, you get to, show that you can continue to do that. But a win is a win, and now you are 2-0 in the BKFC. You're fighting in front of your home crowd there. What was it like? What was the atmosphere with everything going on? Obviously, there's always a lot of local fighters on, many of these cards, but especially Denver, where there is such a, big fan base and a big camp base for a lot of fighters trying to get out there in the elevation. And you have a guy like Kamosi who's local fighting for a title on the top of that card. I'm sure brought in people as well. What was it like? What was the crowd atmosphere for you, and how did it help you and motivate you as you were getting into this squared circle?
It was great. It was honestly a dream come true ever since I was little. I've been boxing for my whole life, so I've always dreamed of fighting in big venues. I never thought I would do it in this new combat sport, but hey, I think I fell in love with this new sport, and to be able to fight in a big, well-known venue, not too far from where I used to live growing up, man, it was great. I had so many people there. When I walked out, I had a badass little entrance. The crowd was going crazy. It was an amazing feeling. I felt like I didn't win the fight the way I should have, but I felt like I won the crowd with that one.
Well, you get what you want the most, and that's the win. Now you're undefeated still in the BKFC. Now you've done, as you said, you've been boxing for a long time, glove boxing. Now you've been doing the BKFC as well. So you had a fight in between your fights, obviously, with the gloves back on. Is that something where you want to go back and forth? Is it just whatever opportunity rises first? What's your outlook now as you sit here 2-0 in the BKFC with all your experience in glove boxing as well?
I feel like boxing is what's going to keep me sharp, so I'm going to try to maintain at least one boxing match in between every bare knuckle fight. As long as my hands are healthy, I'm going to be doing both. Like I said, this boxing game is what's going to help me stay sharp, and it's what's going to help me take over the bare knuckle world.
So you're saying that helps you keep sharp, because obviously, it's different with boxing, at least in bare knuckle boxing. It's still the same skill set for the most part. There's little added nuances of, you work in the clinch and the bare knuckle that you don't do in boxing. And obviously, having to change your defense with gloves on, gloves off, I'm sure. But, it's not like these other fighters who have come from MMA where, you have to work the ground game and work kicks and things that don't apply to the stand-up so much in bare knuckle. So you feel like the two complement each other, and there's not too many differences that you have to worry about in training or going from one fight to the other. You think that they work in harmony and simpatico when you're going back and forth between the two?
Yeah, of course, for the bare knuckle aspect of it, I do work the clinch a lot. But like I said, I feel like the boxing is what's just going to keep me sharp. I feel like if I try to feed into any of that other banging stuff, that's where I could get hurt the most. But I want to win a lot of these fights by boxing if I can. But if we get in the clinch, I will know what to do in the clinch.
Now you're still undefeated, 2-0 in this one. Obviously, when you first get in there, you're just kind of trying your wet your beak, see if you like it. Now, obviously, you come back, you get another impressive win. How are you feeling right now as you continue in the BKFC? What do you starting to look at this division, starting to look at the rankings, see who you want to go after next to try to climb up this ladder? Is there anybody that you're seeing that you think should be your next opponent, or that you've talked to the bosses about?
Yeah, so I feel great. I feel like I could beat a lot of people, even the top fives. Ever since I stepped foot in that BKFC ring, I did research on the top contender. And every single fight, I picture that I'm fighting the best in the world. So whoever they put in front of me, I don't care the rankings. I really don't care as long as they're tough and they want to give me a fight. Unlike this last one, I'm up for the challenge.
And obviously, you said there, before that, as long as your hands are okay with the back and forth between the two sports, how are you feeling after this? You went around, but I think you got the better of it. Obviously, it looks like you didn't take too many, marks on the face, but obviously you always have to worry about the damage to the hands and other things that we don't see. How are you feeling a couple days out after that fight? And how quickly are you looking to get back in there? Do you need a boxing fight in between, or with that short fight that you had, you say, let's just get right back to it?
Yeah, so I feel like with that short of a fight, I wanted to do more work and impress David Feldman, and Chris Lights Out Lido loved me, and like I said, I wanted to do more for the sport. I wanted to get that knockout reel, and I felt like I didn't get to work and show who I was. So my hands are a little swollen still. It was only 2 minutes, but it is bare knuckle, and I want to do more for the BKFC. So most likely another bare knuckle fight.
All right, looking to give back to the fans, give a little more time. We appreciate that. Ramiro Figueroa, thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on your great win over Carson out in Denver.
Thank you.
Has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're gonna go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's gonna help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid. We're going to shift gears here, and we're going to go back into the PFL and talk to a man who is there for all the action. Man you have known and watched fight for a long time. Now you watch him call the fights and talk about them and give his perspective as a guy who's been in there himself, and that is the outlaw Dan Hardy. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. First off, we're going to recap with you what we just saw, this great pay-per-view out in Saudi Arabia, and then let's look forward to what we have coming up next month in Saudi Arabia as well, where we got some titles on the line there as well. But first up, this pay-per-view had some great fights, some big names. The fights delivered for sure. Why don't we start off talking about, of course, when everybody was tuning in for Ngannou going back into MMA for the first time in years against Ferreira. He gets that quick round one finish. I thought that he would use that grappling that we first saw in that Cyril Gane fight against the big guy Ferreira. What I did not expect is him to just dominate like he did so quickly. I thought Ferreira would give a little bit more fight. Maybe we get over that 1.5 rounds. He works his way back in for the first time, gets that ring rust off, but didn't show any ring rust. He showed that he is still the Predator that we knew and loved from so many years ago.
Yeah, he looked fantastic. He looked, stronger but lighter and leaner than he has in his last couple of fights. Certainly in his boxing matches, he came in quite heavy. He looked, a little slower than normal, but this time around he came in, I think 256 or something. He moved incredibly quickly. Was able to get Fajeda down to the floor and maul him, a lot quicker than I was expecting. I mean, one thing I will say is that Fajeda's triangle attempt was pretty good. We can clearly see that his ground game is developing. But Ngannou just took him straight out of his comfort zone. He was able to avoid that big right hand, put him on the floor, and then the power of Ngannou is dangerous wherever you go. Especially if you stuck up against the fence on the floor.
Yeah, absolutely fierce. He's going to go down as one of the best heavyweights of all time, and someone who was already down as one of the best of all time and continues to prove that she deserves, to be talked as one of the GOATs is Chris Cyborg, who also came in there winning a title for the PFL there against Pacheco, who, was a tough opponent. Really, unless you were, Kayla Harrison was someone who couldn't get the best of Pacheco. That's the only one who was beating her. She got the best in their third matchup. Then since Kayla went, and tried other promotions, Pacheco has been running the PFL, 10 fights that she won in a row, and it proves that all that doesn't matter when you face one of the best of all time in Cyborg, who, again, did it maybe unconventionally from what we were used to. I think the takedowns were the things that kind of put her over the top. They both had their moments on the feet, but Cyborg throwing in that wrestling, that grappling that we're not used to seeing, that might have been the things to seal it for her.
Yeah, I agree. She looked very strong, particularly with that first takedown that she hit. It completely caught Pacheco off guard. Just powered straight through her. She looked very strong with those level changes. And that I think is where experience showed through. I think it was quite clear that Pacheco, much like Henan Fajeda in a lot of ways, she's developing. She's maybe not quite hit her peak yet. And the experience of Cyborg, showed through. Even with the damage that she sustained in the first couple of rounds, she wasn't shaken by it. It didn't affect her confidence. She stayed focused. She listened to her corner, and she came out with that beautiful shiny belt to add to her extensive collection.
Yeah, I'm sure I hope she has a whole room of those. With all the things that she's done in MMA and boxing, she just continues to amaze, even at her age, just dominating still. Another guy who dominated was Eblin, keeping his belt against Edwards in that rematch. The first fight, was a lot of, not necessarily back and forth. There was a lot of respect, a lot of hesitancy at times, maybe, not wanting to be the first one to make the move before Eblin gets that knockdown in the third round. It seemed like Edwards was still fighting that same fight. Until the fifth round, he was kind of just in there and just waiting to see what Eblin was going to do. He never really turned it on until it was too late. Otherwise, it might have been a much different fight.
I agree. I think, the threat of being taken down by Eblin, of course, was keeping Fabian hesitant to open up. But at the same time, when he did in the fifth round, I think he was really able to see what he was capable of. He was able to land a significant amount of strikes on Eblin compared to the other rounds. And I think he'll be annoyed with himself. But ultimately, that's where, Eblin shows he's the champion. He shows those championship qualities. He did in their last fight with that nasty cut that he got from the elbow, being able to regroup and come and get the finish when he really needed it. And this time around, he showed great body lock wrestling, as he always does. And I think, his striking is clearly improving. And I think, one thing that needs to come off and meet his striking is his confidence in his striking. He always knows that he's got that wrestling to fall back on, which, gives him that, that ability to kind of, maraud forward, if you like, and land heavy shots. But at the same time, I think, he has to realize that he's got power in his hands as well. And because people are expecting that wrestling game, he might be able to surprise a few people with the pop in his punches in future fights.
Yeah, hopefully he can make that turn, and maybe we'll see a trilogy with these guys down the road. But definitely needs to get that confidence against the champion, because it didn't look like he was quite ready for that rematch just yet. Some guys who were ready, some big upsets down at the bottom of that main card. You had Mosin beating Kadima Gomaev, a big upset. I think it was like a plus 600 underdog or something. He pulls the upset there. What did you see about the two fighters who were kind of both new to the PFL that we might not have seen a lot of, in their obviously fights before in Europe? What did you see as they matched up for the first time and the upset was pulled?
It didn't surprise me too much, to be honest. I mean, I'd looked at Zafar Mosin last year he was on the undercard actually of my PFL Europe card in Berlin. Unfortunately got injured and was unable to compete. But I remember doing my research into him and thinking, first of all, he's incredibly strong and physical for the weight class, which I think showed through in the fight. he's also got a good judo background as well, which stood him in good stead in those clinch situations where Kadi Magomaiv was in on his legs, trying to wrestle him. Mosen just had a good awareness of how to break his posture, keep his spine curved so he wasn't strong, and then force him to carry his weight as much as he could. And then when there were the opportunities to open up, he really made the most of it. It was an impressive performance from Mosen, and I do think we need to keep an eye on that kid. He's clearly going from strength to strength from one fight to the next. But at the same time, Kadi Magomaiv, he's got a bright future ahead of him still. It wouldn't surprise me if they meet at some point in the future for a rematch once they're both, added a few more wins to their record.
And speaking of someone to keep their eye on, Paul Hughes puts his name in that category with the win over AJ McKee, which happens by the worst phrase I ever hear in MMA, split decision. That drives me nuts when we get that. But we only just, 30 seconds we have here before we go to the break. Did Hughes get the win, or did you see it for McKee?
No, I thought it was clear, 29-28 for Hughes. And I think he thought it was quite clear in that as well. AJ McKee's an exceptional fighter, but Hughes really raised his game up to that occasion. Surprised me as well as a lot of other people.
A great performance by him. He's calling out the best right away. He's confident in himself. And when we come back, we're going to talk about some other fighters fighting for a title later next month with Dan Hardy here on the Combat Sports Report.
Has fixed that hitch. He now shoots it at the top of his jump. His release is really pure. And right now he's shooting it at 49% from three. Now, I'm not saying he's going to shoot at 49% from three for the season. But if he's at 42, 43%, Lord have mercy, look out below. Jason Tatum, right now, my number 6 player in the NBA.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Welcome back into the Combat Sports Report. We continue to talk to the outlaw Dan Hardy. We're going to start to look ahead to some fights coming up down the line for the PFL. More fights in Saudi Arabia going back there. Of course, have their home base going there. Lots of action there. Dan, before we get into the fights, though, I've obviously watched you for a long time, and one of the things I know about you is your love of music and different kinds of music. If you look at your social media, you're always rocking the different band T-shirts that people can go check out. For you as a fighter, was such a big lover of music, what are some of your favorite songs to walk out to? Some of the ones that really get you pumped when you're working out? And did you ever feel like, when you have that kind of diverse musical taste, that you needed to change it up and go back and forth between different fights and different styles when you were getting ready for a fight? Or was it just, stick to the same thing and go with what's got you there before?
I've got a very kind of broad selection of music, and a lot of it really is dependent on, well, first of all, if I was in training camp, there would be certain things I would listen to, but Also, the weather, I don't know what it is, but colder weather, I tend to listen to more heavy metal and hardcore, whereas in the summer months, it's more, hip hop and that kind of stuff. But, my parents had a real good selection of musical taste as well. My dad was more of a punk and ska guy, and my mum was classic rock and Fleetwood Mac, Dire Straits, that kind of stuff. So I had a lot of music around me when I was a kid, and then I got into heavy metal. And then from that point, it's just really, kind of diversified over the years. I'm listening to a lot of metal at the moment. I've got my Wu-Tang t-shirt on underneath my Henzo Gracie hoodie at the moment, but I've just had a couple of Deftones t-shirts delivered. They were always a go-to band for me in training camp. Tool, Deftones, Pantera, of course. And then Megadeth were probably my first real leap into heavy metal, so I've got to give those guys a shout out as well.
Cash rules everything around me. Wu-Tang is for the kids, and I'm with you there. I grew up, my dad listened to the classic rock all the time, and then when I grew up, got into the punk and ska, got into the rap, eventually the heavy metal, so I had that same love of diversity in music, and it depends on the mood. I guess the weather makes sense too. The weather affects your mood, so that affects what you're listening to. And also, as a guy who went through your career as a fighter, now your wife is also a fighter. You're in there, you're helping train her, you get her ready for her fights. What's that like for you? Instead of being the one in the cage and the one taking those shots, what's it like for you being on the other side now and being the supporter and, worrying about her as she goes in there to fight each time?
It's a different challenge entirely. I would much rather be in there taking the punches myself, of course. But, she's an incredible student. She's a much better athlete, martial artist than I ever was. So even, anything I can pass on to her, she'll always communicate that better against her opponent. It's a fun and interesting project for us both to be working together on as well. And, it's a big opportunity she's got coming up. First fight of the night at MSG. We're very, very excited for it. And I just, I see her every day in the gym. I know what her potential is, her capabilities. I'm excited for the rest of the world to start to really see what she can do.
Y'all love fighting at the Garden, too. I'm hoping to get to that card, as I always do when they come to New York. We'll see if that happens, but that should be an awesome fight. Looking forward to seeing her get back in there. Also looking forward to seeing the PFL get back in there. End of November, back in Saudi Arabia, PFL 10 on ESPN. People can watch. Title fights up and down the card. Let's start quick with the featherweight. Brendan Loughnane versus Timur Kizrayev. What should people look for in this fight of these two guys who have a lot of experience before getting to the PFL? What should people look for as they try to battle for the title?
But this is really going to test Brendan Loughnane's defensive movement and takedown offense. His Riev is an excellent wrestler. You can't underestimate his striking as well, though. Brendan's got great footwork and great takedown offense. And he's, once he gets his jab and his calf kicks working, he can dismantle anybody in this division. But the pressure that his Riev brings is a different thing entirely. It's going to be an interesting challenge for him. A very, very competitive fight, though.
And just like the pay-per-view, we get the women right there as the co-main event. I love that. We talked to Dakota last week. Dakota Ditcheva fighting against Talia Santos for that flyweight title. Undefeated. She's a badass, dropping people, but Talia Santos, a long-time veteran. What's the challenge that she's going to face fighting this vet for the first time?
Yeah, I think it's the well-roundedness of Talia Santos is the problem here. Every single person that Dakota's fought so far really has showed a real favoritism in either striking or grappling. But, Santos can do everything. She's physically very strong as well. So, she can strike her way in, she can clinch, she can get this fight to the floor, but she's not necessarily precious about keeping it there because she knows that she can strike as well. I think it's the most well-rounded and challenging opponent that Dakota's faced. So, in a lot of people's mind, this is where we get to really see if she's the real deal at this weight class or not.
You also have titles on the line at heavyweight, light heavyweight, lightweight, welterweight, including Brent Primus, who a lot of people know if they've watched MMA for a long time. We're looking forward to watching you, looking forward to your analysis. Thank you so much, Dan Hardy, for joining us. Always enjoyed watching you when you were fighting. Now enjoying watching you, looking at it from that other perspective. Appreciate your time today on the Combat Sports Report here on SportsGrid.
Thank you. Been great to join you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. We'll catch you next week here on SportsGrid and recap everything going on in the world of MMA and bare knuckle fighting here on the Combat Sports Report.